bright out of the shadows of my life. In the darkness is the light.
Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to the So Weird podcast. I'm Kat,
I'm Kathy.
And I'm Melissa.
and this time we are talking about the season 3 episode Dead Ringer, one of the most unique episodes in the history of So Weird.
And it happens in season 3.
I know, who would have guessed?
Yeah, I was thinking, it seems so much like a season 2 episode, especially with the intro.
Yes, this is the first time we ever get to hear Jack do the intro.
And it's actually a more educational one as compared to the other season 3 intros.
Yes.
True.
For our Jack-centered episode, he introduces us to the story of the Tattletale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. His storyline is based on guilt. Jack mentions that this is a story about a man who hears the beating heart of a man that he killed, which is pretty dark for a kid's show.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I was like,
Especially for season
yeah.
3, right?
Yeah.
So right from the get-go, whenever I hear Jack's voice come on to do the introduction, I'm like, oh yes, it's Jack time. A
Mhm.
Jack-centered episode. This is what season 3 should always be like.
Mhm. Yeah, it gives you like some taste of how season 3 could have been if Jack, was the lead.
Yeah, and Patrick Levis does such a phenomenal job in this episode. Like, he really should have gotten so many awards for his work on So Weird.
Mhm.
The one thing about the intro that bothers me a little bit is Jack lays the groundwork that this is an episode all about guilt and how guilt can make you think pretty crazy things. And Jack's final comments in his intro is that sometimes we aren't in the real world. I heard that and I was like, whoa, Jack's talking about the paranormal, but nope. Then he says, sometimes we're in the world of our imagination.
Mhm.
So then it's like, okay, 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Yeah, they had to keep it. Jack is still skeptic. I think he had a line that said like, "Oh, but that's impossible."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty nice save to stop Jack from getting too into the paranormal when Jack has to rationalize everything.
Mhm.
And it also gives me a little bit of a callback to the season 2 episode Avatar, the last time we got to hear Jack do an introduction. Back
Mhm.
then, he was talking about how he and Fee would make like little popsicle people. Or he was talking about, no, he mentioned that later in the episode. In his intro, he talked about digital avatars
Yeah,
and how
yeah.
people would pretend to be something that they weren't.
Yeah.
So for Jack, it's pretty weird to see him talk about the blurring between reality and your imagination.
Mhm.
Yeah, of course he'd do that though, because he would refuse to believe it's anything paranormal.
Yeah.
So we start off with the family and Annie going back to Molly and Jack's old neighborhood, which I thought they always lived in the house in the mountains.
I know, this detail bothers me so much. They go to this garage sale or yard sale, and Molly says that they moved into this neighborhood when Jack was 5 and Fee was 3. So this would have been right around the time that Rick died.
Yeah, and they do show a flashback to that, but it's not the outside of the house. We remember in Medium where Molly is like, "Oh, this house, it's filled with his memories."
Yeah. Like, it was pretty clear that they lived in the house in the mountains.
Hmm.
But Jack remembers living in this house, and he says that for years he had to look at what he had done. So it makes it sound like they had lived in that house for a long time, but that doesn't line up with what we know about the house in the mountains.
Yeah.
So this episode, as much as I love Jack, it's also an episode about painful season 3 writing that ignores seasons 1 and 2.
Yep.
Yeah. Honestly, that just kind of went over my head. Uh, when Molly said he was about 3, Jack was about 5, I figured that was probably around the time they moved into the house in the mountains. But yeah, I definitely agree with that. Now that you mention it.
They probably were wanting it to go over everyone's head. I mean, they probably didn't think anything of it. Like, they already wrote the house out of the story, so they're like, we don't need to go by any, season 1 and 2 plots or details.
Yeah, like our audience is 6-year-olds. Who's gonna know?
Hmm.
And, like, as a kid, it's probably something that I never paid attention to, but looking back on it now, it really bugs me.
Yeah, me too.
But it seems like they had a pretty good relationship going on with their neighbors whenever it was that they lived in this house that we never knew about before, because they found out that Mr. Applebaum was a neighbor that they loved dearly and he died, and now their niece is having a yard sale. And they stop off to take a look at some things, and there's this box that moves all on its own towards Annie. So, of course, Annie just has to have it because she calls it wicked cool. And if it's wicked cool, we have to take it. How can we
Oh,
not?
oh my god.
Yeah, bad writing there.
Yeah, I find it so interesting that Annie's catchphrase was wicked.
I know. What was that like? Was that were they supposed to be like going with 90s or early 2000s lingo? I don't know.
Like, was that late 90s, early 2000s lingo? Because I only ever heard it from her.
I feel like it was.
I don't know.
At least it was in California.
Mhm.
It always made me think of Wiccans, which I guess, like, fits the show in a sense, but coming from Annie, it seems. Like, she's so bubbly, you wouldn't expect it from her.
Yeah.
But anyway, I like Annie's style.
Yeah, me too.
So,
Yeah.
once they get back to the Phillips house, and another thing that bugs me is that there's never any explanation for how or why the box moves towards Annie. Like, I think we're supposed to assume that Annie's just a magnet for the supernatural, calling back to Lightning Rod, but it's
Mhm.
so weird that the box has this connection to Annie, and then the rest of this episode is all about Jack.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, she's the magnet and she brought it to Jack and it's all just like whoa, what a weird coincidence.
Yeah, I kind of figured maybe everything in the episode it wasn't Jack's imagination, that it maybe was Mr. Applebaum's ghost, but that doesn't really make sense.
There's a lot in this that doesn't make sense. But
Yeah,
for the writing, it's very overt in the setup. Once Annie gets back to the house with the box that was wicked cool, Annie and Jack unpack it and they find the telephone. And once Molly says that it was from Mr. Applebaum, Jack becomes visibly uncomfortable and backs away from the box. Like, it is very obvious there's some history between Jack and Mr. Applebaum. So the
Yeah.
setup here is very easy to follow and kind of watered down. There is no subtlety that something happened between Jack and Mr. Applebaum.
yeah, I loved Annie's reaction to it. Like, she immediately realized there was something that Jack wasn't saying.
Yeah, and it's so weird that Molly didn't pick up on it at all, which you'd think she would as her child.
Yeah, I just love this episode for the Jack Annie stuff.
Yes, this episode is so good for all the Janny shippers. They have so many cute moments in here. And it's at this point, once Annie is invested in trying to find out what's wrong with Jack, that he reveals that the Applebombs were the nicest people in the world. But one day he was hitting golf balls in the backyard and he used a real one and smashed it into the window next door. And he was so scared to own up to his mistakes that he ran upstairs and never told anyone. And Mr. Applebaum never fixed the window, so for years he had to look at the window, and Jack equates it to an accusing, angry eyeball, which was some nice imagery. And I really do like how, as Jack is telling that little flashback, the camera transitions from the flashback of looking at the hole in the window back to Jack's face, and they have it centered so that the hole is around Jack's eye.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I really liked that.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I first heard the story that Jack was saying, and it was just, him breaking a window, I was like, what is the big deal?
Yeah, like he was 5 years old.
And Annie says it too, like, you were just a kid. And
Yeah.
I think the episode does okay, maybe good in how it really wrecked his mind, but I still don't think the neighbor not fixing the window is like going to haunt you forever. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
that,
psychologically, the content's interesting, but I wish the writers came up with a better storyline because that's just so dumb.
Like
Like,
maybe it's
who
the
becomes a ghost to haunt a kid that broke your window
yeah, maybe it's the like the golf ball, like it broke and then it hit like someone's head.
and, like, killed somebody? Yeah.
Yeah, that oh my and then like Jack ran away and then nobody ever found out who was the culprit.
Yeah. Like,
Then
that would make
that's
more
some
sense.
intense guilt there.
Yeah.
But just breaking a window, like,
Yeah, or,
okay.
like, if he hit the golf ball and the golf ball hit their cat or something, and Jack was responsible for killing a cat, which is, like, a little, like, not as intense as being responsible for the death of a human being, but still awful, and would make sense as to why this would haunt him so severely.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just and one other thing I have with this episode, just the fact that it's so intense. It doesn't really make sense.
hmm Or it could have been where the golf ball hit Mr. Applebaum's eye and like made him like blind in one eye and he had to wear like an eye patch and now Jack associates like the that hole with the eyeball. That would have been kind of
Or
cool.
if he had to get a glass eye and Jack thinks the
Oh yeah.
glass eye looks like a golf ball.
God.
Yeah, like, so many ideas would have been better than what the writers for season 3 went with.
Somebody needs to write a fic where this happens and
Yes.
explains it all.
So, listeners, if any of you guys write fanfics, we need a fanfic that comes up with a better storyline for why Jack is so haunted by this golf ball.
Yes.
But the episode does start to get really interesting and kind of like a psychological thriller once Molly and Annie leave to go to a concert and Jack's home alone. This is where the real fun starts.
Yeah, that's what I always say. This is basically a psychological thriller episode.
Yeah, which is really cool because it's different from So Weird's usual style.
It does remind me of a lot of scary movies nowadays where they kind of start off right off the bat with just scary scenes, unexplained, why is that happening? And it's kind of throughout the movie. And at the very
Yeah.
end, like, you find out. While I like that, I do always wish for more story
hmm
to be included in those scares. Because if it's just scares, like, that's fun, but it's like, okay, it was just scares. But like compare it to the werewolf episode. Like there were scares, but there was story in the middle and in the beginning and at the end. Like I liked that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like this episode does do a good job with building up suspense because
Mhm.
it is creepy when Jack's the only person in the house. He's home alone. All we get is like Jack muttering to himself and the musical score in the background, and then the phone rings,
Mhm.
but no one's there. And at first, it's like, okay, it's just a wrong number, no big deal, because it was the house phone ringing. But then, as he's looking at some chicken, the antique phone rings, and Jack finds it still buried in the box, not hooked up to a phone jack. And when the phone falls and the receiver comes off, he puts it up to his ear, and then we just hear that creepy male voice going, Jack, Jack Phillips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that is creepy.
Yeah, that is pretty creepy.
And I feel like the creepy music going on in the background after he hangs up does do a lot to make his home alone scenes more unsettling.
Yeah.
Oh.
One thing I'm wondering is it an actual haunting or is it actually Jack's imagination and none of this is actually happening?
I think it does all happen because it leads him to the house where the kid shows up. And
Yeah.
then at the end, the phone is broken.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it is really weird the way that this haunting, so to speak, takes place because Jack goes back to studying and he hears the sound of breaking glass, but then there is no broken glass when he goes to check it out. He
True.
hears like sounds upstairs and then he starts to freak out and go like, okay, I need to blow off studying tonight, call Carrie, go see a movie. I like comedies. Laughs are always good. And then the antique phone rings again and he answers and again it's this creepy voice saying, answer me, I know it was you, Jack, I know what you did, which like it sounds so creepy and then you remember that this guy is haunting a teenager over a golf ball that he hit when he was 5 years old. And like that aspect of the storyline is just so dumb.
Yeah, I'm starting to remember it's season 3.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
golf ball comes down the stairs and lands right before Jack, and the phone rings again. And like even though the storyline is so dumb, the way it's built up with the suspense and the slow golf ball coming down the stairs, the timing of the phone ringing, like that stuff's really well done.
Yeah, the directing is done so well, to be honest.
Yeah, and since you mentioned, like, was it real or not, I guess because it's like, I'm like, feed, like, yeah, that happened. But then the premise, I mean, the monologue in the beginning was like guilt, imagination.
Yeah,
So I guess it was him, his guilt playing mind games on him,
yeah,
Maybe
which like
not though, because remember, Jack took the entire phone apart, threw it in the trash. And then, like, one of the weirdest things that happens in this episode is when golf balls suddenly start raining on Jack in the dining room. And he's crying out, like, no, stop. And he gets buried by golf balls. And then all of a sudden they vanish.
yeah. That was obviously his imagination.
Like, I think that's probably the weirdest point of this episode for him to
Yeah,
just get buried in golf balls. That part I felt is over the top. Because when you have like the single golf ball landing at his feet, like that's creepy. When you have a bunch of golf balls raining down on him, it's like, what is this, Harry Potter getting his letters?
I don't know. Like, I did enjoy the scary scenes, and I can imagine as a kid, that's pretty scary, and you wouldn't need to like have to worry about the guilt of or why or how intense the guilt is about the golf ball.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't see much Goosebumps, but I'm wondering if that would be like a good Goosebumps story.
I feel like it's probably been done with Goosebumps.
Um,
Maybe. I just think it's so interesting that Jack experiences this, and first he assumes that, okay, Annie's playing a practical joke to get back at me. And then it's, okay, clearly I am imagining things and I just need to go to sleep. And then once he's tossing and turning, we hear creaking again, and he slowly turns and sees the image of an eye in the golf ball hole in the window again.
he's having hallucinations. I think it's
Yeah.
like it's good. Like I like the portrayal of him like kind of going crazy or mad,
Yes, like the
paranoid.
expressions that he makes in this episode. And Patrick Levis is such a good actor.
Mhm.
Like he really needs to be commended for his work in So Weird.
Maybe it's just a really bad trip.
Jack would never. Carrie maybe, but not Jack.
Who definitely.
Oh yeah, Clue would.
Yeah, so I like how he, portrays him going kind of crazy and paranoid.
Yeah.
He's trying to rationalize and rationalize, but it just
And
doesn't
it's
make
nice to see
sense.
Jack freak out because Jack always keeps his cool, sticks to the rational. It's such a breath of fresh air in the show to see Jack freaking out and dealing with the supernatural.
Yeah, it's probably because he was alone the entire time. If
Yeah.
anybody else with him, he would be keeping his cool.
Yeah, I feel like people are so much more vulnerable when they're home alone. And like everything is 10 times scarier when you're home alone.
Mhm.
As someone who lives alone, I can attest to that.
When I was younger, like I would be scared being alone. I live alone too, and I'm too rational to think of anything like is, actually scary or, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, like being home alone as a kid and having the phone ring, I think the movie The Ring like terrified me. And the phone and all that, like, oh my god, I get so scared and I would answer and then it's like nobody and I'm like, oh my god. I don't want to hear a voice.
Yeah, I'm always hearing voices and stuff. And seeing shadow people, that's fun.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's creepy here.
So all like these mental games and all that lead him, or actually it's the voice on the phone because Jack is like, what do I do?
Yeah,
And
because like the trash can tips over
mhm.
because the phone is still ringing even though it's broken and in the trash.
So Jack is getting like desperate, like how do I make this stop? and the voice tells him like, you know where to go, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Which is a neighbor's house, Mr. Applebaum's house. And I thought that was a fun scene, like seeing him go into the, creepy dark house where no one lives.
Yes, it reminded me so much of Faye. I was like, oh, Jack, you learned so much from Faye. This is what she would do.
Yeah, follow the trail and investigate or explore, even though he
And like,
doesn't want to.
yeah, and he does it so politely. He's like, hello, the door was open, so I'm just creeping around.
Breaking and entering,
Yeah.
breaking laws and stuff.
But no one has lived there in a long time, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, but Jack doesn't know that.
Yeah, and seeing Jack investigate on his own makes me wish so desperately that we could have had Jack as a lead in season 3.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
It was
it would
fun.
have been so good.
Yeah, definitely.
So at this point of the episode is kind of where like what is the climax, I guess.
Mhm.
And he goes up and to the window where it's still broken and there's still glass on the floor. And he's like, "This can't be."
And I love the comment that he
Uh-huh.
makes about he wouldn't have left the glass here all these years. Surely he cleaned it up. Because that's like kind of like a hint, a little bit of foreshadowing of that what's really going on here. But then we hear the phone ring again and he starts running and gets stuck behind the door.
Yeah.
And it's really like a pinnacle moment in this episode when he finally gets the door open and he runs straight into a kid and then yells, he's like, "Who are you? Who are you?"
I like that.
I know Patrick Levis does such a phenomenal job portraying the fear and panic of that moment. Like it really feels like a horror movie scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, what's the true monster of the story?
Larry. No, just kidding.
Larry.
The little kid. He's the one that's been messing with him.
Yeah, it turns out that there was this kid who apologizes and explains that they just moved there and he didn't know the house was so close, so he came over to apologize for the baseball he threw in the window that morning. So Jack and the kid go to retrieve the ball, and Jack said that it wasn't his house. So the child, Larry, asks whose house it was and if they're nice, but he's afraid to tell them. Jack says that he knows the feeling, and he makes a deal with Larry and is like, oh, well, I talk to Mr. Applebaum on the phone every now and then, and I'll tell him what happened. So Larry feels better, and so does Jack. It's kind of a sweet wrap up, and it does lead you in the direction of like, oh, maybe this was all in Jack's imagination because this was something that just happened today, and he's attributing his own past emotions to it.
Yeah. But that doesn't really make sense because how would Jack know what happened that day? Maybe I'm just being too logical about everything.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a way, like this ending was a way for him to forgive himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed with her.
Even though it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah, it really wasn't.
But also, why didn't the old man clean it up? Maybe because they never went up in their attic. Some
No, it was
old.
because it just happened today.
Oh, really?
Like, the kid threw the baseball in the window that morning. So when Jack first went up there, he thought, oh my God, this guy never cleaned up the mess that I made so long ago, but that can't be right, could it? And then he finds out, oh, that's not from when I put a ball in the window. It's from this kid launching a baseball in the window just today.
But I thought he said in the beginning how they never cleaned it up, so he had to see it every day.
Yeah, until
Or
they moved away.
was that just his imagination, his guilt?
It could have been that, or my impression was like they never fixed it while Jack still lived there, like as a
Yeah.
neighbor.
Mhm.
So I assume like they did fix it eventually, and then this kid just happened to just break the window that day.
Yeah. Unless his baseball went through the same hole as the golf ball and
Yeah, but baseballs are bigger than golf balls.
made a slightly bigger hole.
I don't know. Well, we'll never know. And why the old man never fixed it in the first place.
Or why the old man held such a grudge against a 5-year-old breaking a window. Well, the end of this episode is so sweet and warms my shipper heart. Because
Yeah.
Molly and Annie return from the concert, and Jack's just sitting in the dining room, very nonchalantly doing his homework. And then Annie goes to her box of wicked cool stuff, picks up the phone, and is sad that her antique immediately falls apart. She turns to Jack and is like, "Did you do this?" And I love Jack's line of, "Now, why would I take away my precious study time to take apart a phone that doesn't work anyway?" He has like, such a smug, adorable look on his face when she's all pouty. It's so cute. It's such a shipper moment.
Yeah, agreed. I love that moment so much.
Yeah, like their entire interaction in that last scene, because Molly announces that she brought back dessert and leaves the two of them alone. And Annie muses that, "Oh, well, now I have to throw this stuff away." And Jack's like, "In the garbage can? Well, you're welcome to try." So Annie gets the feeling that something's up, and she stands so close to them, it looks like they could kiss. And she's like, "So, something happened here tonight." And then Jack's response is sarcastic, "Yeah, you're right." And Annie gets so excited. "I knew it." And thinks that Jack's gonna open up to her. And then he's all, "Tonight, I worked on my homework there. I said it." Like, it's so cute the way they interact with each other.
Yeah.
That was pretty much it.
Yeah, we just leave with another image of the broken phone, and then it rings one last time and rolls the credits.
I did forget to mention that they did have a spot in the episode where they showed the broken window and then they animated an eyeball behind it.
Yeah, when Jack was tossing and turning and then staring back and looking out the window.
Mm-hmm.
That was
I
another
get
cool piece of cinematography.
it was kind of cool, but I guess looking back at it now, I'm like, that eyeball doesn't look that great.
Yeah, but I thought it like was kind of a callback to the introduction with the sound of the beating heart from the Telltale Heart. Like the
Hmm.
pulsing of the hole and the eyeball for Jack was that, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am surprised at how good the directing is. That the director, he's only directed two things in his entire career. This episode being one of them, and one credit before that called Dead Man's Gun. But yeah,
You
you
should.
did think he'd be doing more stuff as good as this was.
Hmm, that's weird. He
Yeah.
did good.
Are we ready to go into ratings time?
Yes.
Yep. I think I will give it an 8 or 8.5 out of 10. I do really love it. It's probably my number one favorite episode of season 3, and it pops in and out of my top 5 of all time. And yeah, I just love the directing. I love the psychological thrillerness of it. Jack completely makes the episode. And I love the Johnny moments.
Mhm.
There are a few things that don't make sense, but the good things just overpower that for me.
For me, I would give it 7 out of 10, which might be one of the highest for season 3 episodes. I enjoy watching it, and I really like the suspense and Jack's acting and him exploring the house. I love all that. I personally think it needed more story that included a better reason for the kill. If I want to compare like other good season 3 episodes, like a lot of people love Voodoo, there's like there's much more story there. They both have like dumb moments and reasonings, so they have their flaws. But this episode, it just needed a little bit more, I think, or maybe it's an episode that doesn't need more. But for me, I need a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree with that. I rated it like either a 6.5 or a 7 because there is so much that I love about it. I love that we have a Jack focused episode, that we get to see Jack face the paranormal. I love the suspense and that this episode feels like a psychological thriller. I love that it takes the show in a different direction that we hadn't really seen before. I love the references of the Tattletale Heart, but it really bothers me that the writers came up with such a lame haunting. Like they could have done a better storyline than old man angry at 5-year-old kid. Like that does not a good ghost story make. So that aspect of it really bothers me. But overall, I do enjoy this episode, and Patrick Levis deserves all the awards.
Did you
Yeah.
guys hear the credit music at the end?
Yeah, and it's just like Patrick Levis going like, "Hello."
Hello, hello.
I never really stick around for the credits, so I'm
Well,
completely missed that.
go back and listen to it. It's just a few seconds, but it made me laugh. It's
Me too.
like a remix of Jack saying hello.
Whoever
Yeah.
this can use that for the outro.
Oh no, no, no. maybe at the end. I
Well,
think
other
that's
than that,
it
there's
for this.
not much to say about this episode.
Mhm.
There is noticeably very little Molly and Annie. There is zero Ned, Irene, or Carrie. Carrie only appears in that mention that Jack gives about like, oh, maybe I'll call Carrie tonight to go to the movies, and then they don't.
Yeah,
Any other news to talk about?
none that I can think of.
Me neither. Just that we have 2 more episodes, right, to review.
Yeah, Annie's song and the river, and
Yeah.
that makes me sad.
Yeah, we're getting close to the end.
Yeah,
But we'll be done with reviewing episodes, but we're still thinking of ideas of other episodes to do together. We definitely will have an episode talking about the music,
yeah,
and some other stuff, and we have hopefully more interviews to do. The Alex Johnson interview will be coming out soon. I guess if anyone has ideas for other episodes, go ahead and let us know. I know that we have gotten ideas in the past about reviewing other shows. You know, like maybe Are You Afraid of the Dark or Goosebumps or something like that, supernatural.
yeah,
But I don't know. I don't know if we can do that because I feel like we need to review things that we are all passionate about, that we
yeah,
can spend an hour talking about and an hour or two editing. And I don't know if we all have like the similar likes in those shows or movies.
yeah. Personally, I've never even watched them, but I'd be interested to. I joked to a friend of mine about after doing this, we'll be doing Buffy, and he's like, "Oh my god, do it!" And I'm like, "I was joking."
But then it wouldn't be the So Weird podcast.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I don't have like the same passion about any other show that I have for this one.
yeah,
Same. I mean, I like other shows,
Yeah,
but
but like
I don't
not the
like.
same.
Yeah, it's not the same. It'll be a whole different genre. And in this show, like I am down to talk about almost every episode
Hmm.
for an hour. Like we can talk.
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I mean, we still like to hear some ideas.
Yeah, so if you have any thoughts about what else you'd like to see us do with the So Weird podcast, please let us know.
And let us know how you've enjoyed or your thoughts about our whole journey. We started this like a few years ago.
Yeah, it's been crazy.
I'm gonna cry when it's over.
Well,
But thank you all so much for being with us. This has been the So Weird podcast. I'm Kat.
I'm Kathy.
And I'm Melissa.
Keep the faith and never give up on So Weird.